What's good, everybody? Happy Friday evening. This is going to be a quick live stream. I want to welcome you to the Cops and Convicts podcast with Sean Shepard. I am yours truly, Sean Shepard. We are streaming live right now on TikTok, Facebook, our YouTube channel, and LinkedIn. Hit that subscribe button, share button, notification bell. We are going to get into some stuff today that has nothing to do with cops, has nothing to do with convicts, but it does have a lot to do with my career. Hey, I'm sorry about that. This microphone and I do not get along very well. So I'm hoping you can hear me right now. I want to welcome everybody to the Cops and Convicts podcast with Sean Shepard. I am Sean Shepard, yours truly. We are streaming live on TikTok, our Cops and Convicts YouTube channel, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Please hit that subscribe button, thumbs up button, share button, notification bell. This is not going to be a long live stream, and it's going to have nothing to do with cops or convicts, but it has everything to do with how I got to this position in life. First of all, if it weren't for my belief in God and putting God first, the things that have happened to me in my life would not have happened. And it really did start with sports. I've always been a sports fan. I've always loved sports, in particular football. I don't know why. I don't know why this microphone keeps cutting off. I need to stop touching it. So I don't know. I have no idea where I left off at, but I'm gonna try this again. Um, Sports is the reason why I'm here outside of my belief in God. You know, I didn't have a plan. I had no plan whatsoever other than to try and be obedient to God in my life and just gave my life to God. And wherever God decided to take me, that's where I was going to go. And so, because of that, I owe where I'm at to God. And He put me on this path of sports. And as I was saying, when I played football in high school, I wasn't athletic enough to go to a major Division I college, but I was smart enough and loved the game enough to be good enough to make, all-state team in New Jersey. My senior year, I was the most valuable player on defense. And I had every intention of playing football in college, and I did my freshman year. I wound up going to Georgetown University, and it was an experience for me that taught me a lot because it was the first time I was around people from all different walks of life in different countries. So it was an eye-opening experience, and I learned a lot about people in general. And one of the things that I decided I wanted to do while I was at Georgetown was I wanted to be a sports psychologist. And I decided I wanted to be a sports psychologist because the truth of the matter is, my best classes that I took in college were psychology classes. You might say, well, they're easy classes. Yes, they're easy compared to chemistry and what I took calculus, failed calculus my junior year. But I was always fascinated with human behavior and why people did what they did. What's the meaning behind your behavior? What's motivating human behavior? So I got into psychology, and I stumbled across this field called sports psychology, and it was a psychologist working with athletes on mental imagery and the mental aspect of succeeding at a high level in whatever sport you were playing. And I guess that was the first time, without me realizing it, that I wanted to help. I wanted to help somebody be better at what they were doing on the field. So as I was getting close to graduating from college, I was starting to research what were the best sport psychology schools in the country. And I whittled my choices down to Springfield College in Massachusetts and San Diego State in San Diego, California. Now I'm an East Coast kid. I'm originally from Brooklyn, grew up in New Jersey, and then went to college in DC. Now, if you're growing up on the East Coast your whole life, and as a guy, you're required to shovel driveways and deal with the winter and deal with ice and deal with gray, depressing weather for, I don't know, like 6 months out of the year for the most part, just about. And you had a choice between going to Springfield College in Massachusetts or San Diego State in San Diego, California. Which place would you have chosen? I chose San Diego State. So I go out to San Diego State, and I wasn't fully admitted into my graduate school program. I had some deficiencies as it relates to the textbooks that I needed to have covered while I was in undergraduate school. And before I could get fully admitted, I believe I had to take 4 classes. So I spent the first semester of my graduate school career taking classes so that I could start my grad program. And it was during that time that I'm taking classes that I decided I needed to get another job. I moved out to San Diego in 1990, and there was a recession taking place across the country, and jobs were scarce. And if you did have a job, you needed more than one to make enough money to pay the rent. If you had a car payment, utilities, you know, go out on a date every once in a while, buy clothes. So I was looking for another job. And I don't know how I befriended Robert Griffith. I don't know, for you old heads, Robert Griffith is a former safety for the Minnesota Vikings. And back when John Madden had his all Madden teams, Griff made all Madden team a couple times. And it just so happened that Griff's best friend was Tony Clark. Tony Clark is the current director of the Major League Baseball Players Association. The title is either director or president. So those two were tight. And at the time, Tony was playing minor league baseball for the Milwaukee Brewers, I believe. And I had bumped into them on campus, and we were just chopping it up, and somehow I made it clear to them that I was looking for a job. And they were like, "We think we can get you a job in the weight room. We'll introduce you to Coach Oden." Like the weight room. Okay, I know enough about lifting weights because I played football, but I didn't really know what I was going to do in the weight room. So I interviewed with Coach Oden. Rest in peace, bro. Thank you for everything that you did for me. He gave me the job, and I immediately fell in love with the discipline of the job. Even though I wasn't the most disciplined person, I think I got this job when I was 23, 24, and I was still out in the streets at that age, even though I was in grad school earning a master's degree. And I had, at my peak, I had 4 jobs at the same time. And so I take this job, and I fell in love with strength and conditioning. I fell in love with teaching athletes, not just football players and basketball players, but all players of all sports. I fell in love with teaching them the right technique on, for example, how to do power cleans, how to do hang cleans, the correct way to power bench press, um, different workouts that we put them through as it relates to agility and on the track. And so at San Diego State, I coached the football team. I was fortunate enough to coach guys like Marshall Faulk, Leroy Glover, Kabir Bahabijamila, um, Kyle Turley, Ephraim Salam, guys that have won Super Bowls and won Hall of Famer. But I also coached men and women's basketball. I coached the men's team, but helped with the women's team. Beth Burns, who's the associate head coach at USC right now, she was the head coach at San Diego State when I was there. Coached women's softball. Shout out to Stevie Campbell. Who else did I coach at San Diego State? Helped with women's volleyball. So I coached a bunch of different sports. And before you knew it, I didn't want to be a sports psychologist anymore. I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach. And that set me on a path that I never could have imagined that I would have been on, and the people that I met. And so after I got my master's degree, I still had this coaching job. I was a graduate assistant coach for the football team. And I was looking for my business card because I still have it. I still have that business card. Wait a minute. Let me see. Is it here? Wait, hold on one second. Let me see if I can show it to you. Let me see if I, yes, yes, yes. This old thing. Check this out. That is my business card from when I coached at San Diego State. Yes, I still have it because it means a lot to me. So I'm looking for a job. I'm looking for a job. I'm looking for a job. And I finally get a job interview at Eastern Michigan, Ypsilanti, Michigan. Never heard of the place. Went there, interviewed, didn't get the job. And I was very upset. Very upset. So the second interview I went on was actually a phone interview. And I want to share a little. I want to share a little something with you about collegiate athletics. I'm on an interview with the head strength coach at Kansas State University in Manhattan, Kansas. His nickname is the Little Apple. I'm serious about that. And at the end of the interview, Rod Cole says to me, Sean, you sound fantastic. And I would love to hire you. But I got to hire a black guy. I didn't ask him why. I just said, Coach, I am black. He says, you are? Well, that's fantastic, man. Let me let's arrange for you to come out here and visit. I'll interview you in person, and I got the job. I didn't understand why the position had to go to a black guy until I got to Kansas State. And if you've ever been in Manhattan, Kansas, it is smack dab in the middle of the Bible Belt. I noticed there was no public transportation when I got there. This was 1996. I saw a couple of people riding on horseback down the street, in the middle of the street. And then when I got into the athletic department, the football team was predominantly black. The basketball team was just about all black. And all of the coaches of all the various teams, whether it was women's basketball, just name a sport. Evidently, there was this unwritten rule in collegiate athletics at different universities that, we have to have one position, a mid-level position, mid-level, mid to lower level position of coaching. That we have to have a person of color here. We have to have one black person. And so I got the job. I won't go into why I only stayed there 5 months. Didn't get into any trouble. Just my personal life with my girlfriend at the time. We split up, and I looked around at my surroundings, and I'm a black guy in Manhattan, Kansas. The nearest city is Kansas City, which was a 2-hour drive away. My girlfriend and her daughter were not going to move out there with me after all, and I just realized that I was not going to be able to have a comprehensive life living in Manhattan, Kansas, being like one of the only black people in the entire town that was single. Didn't want to do it, wasn't going to do it. That might bother some people, but that's reality. And if you've never been in that position, as a person of color, being completely surrounded by people who know nothing about you or your culture, they don't look like you, they don't sound like you, they don't act like you, they don't understand you. No bueno. Wasn't going to do that. I had already done that as a kid and it had left a scar. I wasn't going to continue to do that as an adult. So I was looking to get out. As fate would have it, there was an opening at Boston College. And as fate would have it, the head strength coach at Boston College, let me show you a picture of him. Here you go. That's me. Obviously, the head coach is Greg Finnegan in the middle, and the other assistant coach is my guy, Mike Portimani. So I get the job at Boston College. Okay. And the way I got the job at Boston College was the way I got the job at Kansas State. Greg Finnegan used to be an assistant coach at Kansas State. So here I am already at Kansas State. He needs to fill a position on his staff, and the position that he needs to fill, he has to hire a black guy. Now, I need you guys to understand that are, people who are going to say, oh, you're a DEI hire. Let me explain why I'm a DEI hire. First of all, I was qualified. Second of all, if hiring were equal across the board from day one, you wouldn't need to have a position designated for a black guy when all the other positions were filled by white guys, or white coaches, white female coaches. So I'm trying to educate you on why diversity, equity, and inclusion is a thing. It should never have been a thing. If it wasn't for racism, you wouldn't have had to do stuff like that. If it wasn't for misogyny and sexism, there would be no need for Title IX. I'm trying to educate you. So here, my first 2 jobs I get as a coach on the collegiate level, my skin color has something to do with why I got the job. They had to hire a black person so that they had some person of color coaching and working with all these athletes of color. Now, I don't know whether they did it for aesthetics, probably, because they weren't doing it out of the goodness of their own hearts. If they were, I'll say it again, there would be no need to be designating a lower level position so that we could hire one black guy or one female coach. I get the job. And I start working with football, which was normal for me. But I was given the men's basketball team. Like, you're going to coach the men's team. And I was fired up about that. And it just so happened that the head coach had been there for a number of years. And there was rumors that he was going to leave. I think that he was in some type of power struggle with the athletic director. At the time, the athletic director was a guy named Chet Gladchuk. And who was the football coach at the time? It'll come to me. He coached for the Chargers. Anyway, it's not important. I get the job. I'm coaching men's basketball, women's basketball, women's volleyball. I coached a little bit for the swim team. I coached field hockey. I want to say softball, but for those of you who don't know, Elizabeth Hasselbeck and both Hasselbeck brothers, Tim Hasselbeck and can't remember the starting quarterback, Matt Hasselbeck played for the Seahawks, and I think he played for the Packers. Those guys played at Boston College. I coached a basketball player by the name of Scooney Penn, for those of you that remember him. Didn't coach Elizabeth. I just remember her starting to date Tim, stuff like that. So I go to Boston College, and during the 1 year I was there, the men's basketball team won their first ever Big East regular season championship and won the Big East tournament for the first time. And let me show you. The ring to the right is the Boston College ring. I'll get to the ring to the left and the middle in a moment. So we win that championship, and the rumor was that Jim O'Brien, the head basketball coach, was going to take a job at Ohio State. And sure enough, he takes a job at Ohio State. And they leave. I want to go with them. I don't go right away because there wasn't a position for me. And I get the job, a job that didn't exist. So let me tell you what happened. Jim O'Brien wanted me to be his head strength and conditioning coach. The new basketball coach, the new women's basketball coach, was an old friend. She was the former basketball coach at San Diego State. Her name is Beth Burns. So I want to go to Ohio State. The new men's basketball coach wants me as his strength and conditioning coach. The new women's basketball coach wants my old boss, the guy that taught me, to be her strength and conditioning coach. Meanwhile, football already had its own strength coach. I can't remember that guy's name. He wasn't a very nice guy. Andy Geiger was the athletic director at Ohio State at the time, and he had a decision to make. Before he made the decision I'm about to share with you, Jim O'Brien was on the phone with me, and he was telling me he was going to bat for me. And he was telling me that he sold Andy on every imaginable characteristic that I had to convince him to give me the job. And he told me that he told Andy, look, Sean's a black guy, and we need more black coaches here. I shit you not. Andy's response to that, and this is Jim O'Brien telling me this, is, well, the coach that Beth wants is half Mexican. Now, we're not supposed to be discussing people's races when it comes to employment. I believe that that's illegal. But Jim O'Brien was telling me this to let me know that he was going to bat for me. Meanwhile, I took an interview with Tubby Smith. He's the brand new coach at Kentucky. And I actually went to Louisville, Kentucky, and met him at a basketball tournament, and he interviewed me in the stands while he was scouting this basketball tournament. And O'Brien knew I was doing that. And when I got back, I was kind of torn. I was hoping I'd get the Kentucky job. I was hoping that somebody would offer me a position. So what happened was Andy Geiger created a new position. That's how much money Ohio State has. He created the position of director of strength and conditioning for Olympic sports. And that person would oversee every single sport at Ohio State except for basketball. Dave Kennedy. Dave Kennedy was the name of the strength coach at Ohio State in 1997. And Geiger picked my boss, my ex-boss, instead of me. And it made sense. He was more experienced than me, and he said to Jim O'Brien, he said, look, who would you pick, the teacher or the student? And Jim O'Brien said, look, fine, you can pick him as the director of strength and conditioning for Olympic sports. I just want Shep to be my strength coach. That never materialized because Dave had some health issues. Even though he took the job, he then backed out of taking the job. He wanted to stay in San Diego. That's where his roots were. And that's how I got the job of director of strength and conditioning at the Ohio State University. And during that time, it was, I want to say that was probably the most important 3 years of my life up to that point, was the years that I spent at Ohio State and allowing my eyes to open about the realities of collegiate athletics. Because if you want to recap, from the time I decided I wanted to be a coach, and I got a job at Kansas State, and I got a job at Boston College, and I got a job at The Ohio State, all three jobs, my race played a role in me getting the job. My race was discussed as a point of whether or not I was going to get hired. And it was during that time that I started to question. I'm like, okay, they set aside these lower level positions for a black guy or a person of color to get this job. I was just an assistant strength and conditioning coach, man. When I was at Kansas State, I made $28,000 a year, and that was the most I'd ever made in my life. And then when I went to Boston College, I got a pay raise to $34,000 a year living in the city. So, you know, the cost of living in Boston is a lot higher than the cost of living in Manhattan, Kansas. And then when I got to Ohio State, I think my salary, now remember, I was the director of strength and conditioning for all Olympic sports, meaning I was overseeing 34 sports. That means 34 different head coaches and assistant coaches, and they were paying me $42,000 a year. Meanwhile, the football strength coach, I think he was making $100,000 a year. He only had to coach one team. So if you don't think that there's a hierarchy, a pecking order in athletic departments, there is. I get this job, and The two most important people I met during that job, one of them was this guy. That's Clark Kellogg. If you follow college basketball at all, you know who Clark Kellogg is. You know exactly who Clark Kellogg is. That this picture was taken actually earlier this year, January of 2024. Clark, brother, if you ever watch this live stream, I can't thank you enough for the person that you are, the man of God that you are, and the big brother that you have been to me from the moment we met until now. And I hope we remain that close. The second most important person that I met while I was at Ohio State was Archie Griffin. If you don't know who he is the only two-time Heisman Trophy winner in the history of college football. And Archie actually was my boss. I'll tell you the quick story of how he became my boss. I was having difficulties with the assistant athletic director that I was assigned to. Her name was Michelle Willis, and she comes from Temple University, and all she talked about was John Chaney this, John Chaney that. It's like, great. You know and worked with John Chaney. And she was fine until she started to get too friendly with me. And I remember one night she asked me if I would meet her for dinner. And I asked if this had anything to do with my job responsibilities. And she said, no, I just want to take you out to dinner. And I was like, no, thanks. And from that moment on, she became a very difficult boss for me. I had come over with the basketball staff from Boston College, and I had planned on traveling with the team to our away games. And she just decided she was going to flex and say, no, you're not going to go. And I wasn't having that. And ultimately, what happened was I got reassigned from Michelle Willis to Archie Griffin. And that was a major moment for me in my life because Archie was like a big brother. He looked out for me, gave me some great advice. I'm going to share the advice that he gave with me. I'm going to share the advice that he gave to me with you. Because the coaches didn't like me. And I remember Archie took me to lunch and he sat me down. And I said, why am I having so much difficulty with these coaches? He said, let me explain to you. You had enemies before you got off the plane here in Columbus. You're an outsider. They created a position. You filled it. You're younger than most of the head coaches that have to work with you so that their teams get proper strength and conditioning. You're smart. You're handsome. You act like you're happy to be here. Friendly. You're intelligent. He said, and lastly, you're black. And you came with this staff. They don't like you for all those reasons. And I said, I can't do anything about any of that. He says, I know you can't. He said, the best thing that you can do is whenever you want to make a decision in the weight room, send an email out to all those coaches and ask them for their input. And he said, a majority of them aren't even going to answer your email. But at least make them feel like they're part of the process. And then you go ahead on and make the decision that you wanted to make anyway. You never know. You may get a good idea that changes your decision. But make them feel like they're part of the process. And that was great advice. If you're a leader, make the people who you lead feel like they're part of the process. And be open-minded enough to receive an idea from someone who looks up to you figuratively and literally, you might get a great idea from them. It changes your mind. And from that point on, I would always tell people that worked, I don't like to say work for me, but I was their supervisor. I would always say, we're going to do it my way, unless you can show me a better way. If there's a better way than my way, I'm down to do it. My ego is not going to stand in the way of implementing a better way to do something. Just because it wasn't my idea doesn't mean we shouldn't do it if it's a better way to do things. So Archie taught me that. Clark taught me that follow the Lord, stand on your principles as a man of God. That's what Clark taught me. And I had written an article at Ohio State, and the article had to do with the fact that there were so few Black employees in athletic departments, especially in relation to how many Black athletes were in these athletic departments, making a whole lot of money for a whole lot of people. And the money that was being made, they weren't seeing any of it. So I wrote this article about that. And if you can imagine, there were a lot of people who didn't like the fact that I wrote that article and that it made its way across the country. Andy Geiger did not like the fact that I wrote that article. Archie, my boss, I remember spending an hour and a half on the phone with him, and he was trying to talk me out of not releasing that article into the public sphere. And he didn't know it was too late. I had already done it. Right. So Clark read the article and was like, yo, this is powerful. Every word of this is true. What do you want to do with this? I said, I want the Columbus Dispatch to publish this entire piece that I wrote. He said, I think that's an outstanding idea. I said, I doubt that they're going to do it. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll call down there and ask for a meeting, and I'll go down there to the Columbus Dispatch with you. Clark didn't just support me publicly. I'm sorry, he didn't just support me privately. He went down there in person as somebody who is a Buckeye legend, a legend in the state of Ohio. And now when you look at Clark Kellogg's career now, I mean, Clark's as famous as it gets in terms of college basketball. He's the face of college basketball. Clark went down with me to the Columbus Dispatch and tried to convince them to publish this article that a lot of people saw as controversial, even though it was true, and they didn't do it. They wouldn't do it. So while I was at Ohio State, this is what happened. I told you the ring all the way to the right is the ring that we won while I was at Boston College. That's the Big East Championship ring. The middle ring is a Final Four ring, and we won that during my second year at Ohio State. First year, we went 8-22. Our record, we were abysmal. We lost games for 2 straight months. Can you imagine playing basketball games for 2 months and not winning a game? And we went all the way to the Final Four with the best backcourt in the country, I think. Scooney Penn and Michael Redd. You might know who Michael Redd is. Michael Redd had a great career with the Milwaukee Bucks. I started coaching Michael when he was, I think he was 16. Summer of 1997. I think Michael was 16, definitely 16 or 17. And then the last ring over to the left is the Big Ten championship ring that we won my last year. So ironically enough, my last year was the was 2000, spring of 2000, when school was over that year in 2000. I resigned. Scooney Penn declared for the NBA draft. Michael Redd declared for the NBA draft. Michael was drafted in the second round by the Milwaukee Bucks. By August of 2000, I had moved back to San Diego. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I decided I was going to create a nonprofit organization. I see a comment here. Hey there. So hey, Alfonso. I mean, Americano. I'm sorry. I'm still getting good at noticing these comments. I'm glad you tapped in. I'm talking about my college career in sports and my high school career in sports, and that how sports got me to this point in life. So I'm talking about my last year at Ohio State. And I moved back to San Diego and decided to create a nonprofit organization. And the nonprofit organization, I decided to name it Embrace. And I was going to utilize sports to bring people together to serve the community. And the first program that we put together in San Diego as a nonprofit, I started the nonprofit in 2004. We're celebrating 20 years of being a nonprofit this year. The first program didn't even have a name. We went to underprivileged middle school. We went to underprivileged middle schools and taught those children the importance of healthy lifestyle habits, healthy lifestyle habits, cultural diversity, and we had a healthy cooking class. So we taught them kickboxing. We taught them about different cultures, and we had healthy cooking classes. And we had sports, whether they were professional athletes or collegiate athletes, come and, for example, cook a healthy meal with the kids and their parents. Take kickboxing classes with the kids, and showing them that sports brings people together. Whether you like it or not, if you're paying attention, if you go to just about any sporting event, particularly football or basketball, look in the stands. You see black, white, Latino, Asian, everybody is coming together to watch this team play. And if you're rooting for the home team for at least 2.5 hours for a basketball game, 3 hours plus for a football game, everybody's on the same team. We're hugging it out, high-fiving if our team scores. We're crying in our beer if our teams lose. It's kind of the way life should be. The problem is when the games end, we all go back to our respective silos. We go back to our homogenous environments. White people go back to their white neighborhood. Black people go back to their black neighborhood. We don't all live together like we do during that basketball game or that football game or that soccer game or that hockey game. We all go back to where we came from. And I wanted to bring people together. That's all I've ever wanted to do, is bring people together to spend time with one another so that we can see that we have a lot in common as people. But you're never going to do that if you don't spend time with each other. That's what sports has done for me. So that first program, I used sports to bring people together and teach low-income kids who are used to eating flaming hot Cheetos with Tapatio on it. Like, okay, have that every once in a while. Don't have that be your main thing to be eating. So I did that. Funding ran out for that. And then the Great Recession hit. And normal everyday Americans losing their jobs, homes being foreclosed upon, and people were homeless. And I was sitting on the board of a healthcare foundation at the time, and this dude that was on the board, funding had run out for the other program, the first program that I had. I never really had any funding for it. And he said to me, "Why don't you serve the homeless?" And I'm like, "Serve the homeless? How does that fit into sports?" And then I thought about it. If you look at the homeless population, there's a lot of everybody. There are certain demographics that are more prone to be homeless than others, but I looked at the homeless population. And then I also looked at the fact that it doesn't matter what we're doing. If we're serving people, I can reach out to everybody and say, let's come together and help these people. And so I had some athletes help and do that. So 2 days a week, we serve the homeless in downtown San Diego. I skipped a step. Hang on. You see that guy? If you're old enough, you'll know that that's Jerry Tarkanian. And I met Jerry Tarkanian randomly. I told you God has played a huge role in my life. The first program that I was doing that barely got off the ground, didn't have much funding for it, there was this um, it was a pharmaceutical company, and they were headquartered in Vegas, and they were staying at the Turnberry. If you've ever been to the Turnberry, like these are luxury condos, like 6,000 square foot apartment. And they had invited me to go there because they were thinking about helping me with my program. And I go down into the exercise room, and I'm on the treadmill. The towel biter. Yes, talk to shark. Yes, absolutely. So I'm in the room, I'm exercising, and then I get on the bicycle, the stationary bike. And Jerry Tarkanian just walks in to the Turnberry. Little did I know that's where he lived. And he gets on two exercise bikes away from me. And I'm on the phone with my boy. I'm like, yo, man, I got to get off the phone. Jerry Tarkanian just walked in. And I'm going to tell him about my program, how we bring people together through sports to serve underprivileged communities. I bet you he'll go for it. Got off the phone, introduced myself, told Jerry Tarkanian what I did. And he's like, that sounds fantastic. Well, I'm going to give you my assistant's number. I want to get involved with your nonprofit. And he did. And he did. And he came out to San Diego. I had a fundraiser that I was doing with the San Diego Gulls. I told you I worked at Ohio State. Archie Griffin was my boss. I asked Archie to come to this fundraiser. I asked Jerry Tarkanian to come to this fundraiser. And there's a guy by the name of Willie O'Ree. Willie O'Ree is the guy who broke the color barrier in the National Hockey League. He's the Jackie Robinson of hockey. And for those of you that are watching, I'll leave you this to ponder. Why was there ever a color barrier in sports in the first place? You think about it. If you had come up with an answer for that, I want to hear what your answer is. Those three were my guests of honor, and they came out to support my nonprofit. I have pictures of it. I don't have pictures of it here. Couldn't find them. So I got to go out soon. They supported me, and we started serving the homeless. And at some point, I will show you the two things that put us on the map nationally while serving the homeless in San Diego. I got thousands of college kids coming out per year to bring food, clothing, and blankets to the homeless 2 days a week. And one Thursday, we're serving homeless, and this woman and her son comes up to me and asks if they could get some food. I'm like, sure, anybody who's out here that wants to eat can get some food. And she introduces herself. She says, I'm Storm, the former American gladiator. And I looked at her, I'm like, you are Storm. And so maybe over the next 2 months, I took her and her son in. I had a spare bedroom, and we made national news. And there was a reporter named David Moy in San Diego who wrote for AOL News at the time. And he writes this article about this homeless American gladiator. And in the article, he puts our nonprofit's web link in the body of the article. And it just so happens that Sherry Shepard, who was the host of The View, read that article. And as I was planning a charity event on the flight deck of the USS Midway, my phone rings and I didn't have great reception. I heard something, something, something from The View. I knew what The View was, and I thought it was a producer. Now, it was Sherry Shepard calling me directly. And what wound up happening is Sherry wanted to help Debbie Clark is her name, and her son while they were homeless because Debbie's a single mom and Sherry Shepard is a single mom. And as fate would have it, they both had in vitro kids. So Sherry invites me to her celebrity wedding and invites all of her celebrity guests from Hollywood to donate to our nonprofit in lieu of wedding gifts. She had mentioned our nonprofit on The View a couple of times, and we got a lot of public airplay from that. So that happened while we were serving the homeless. While we served the homeless, we met a lot of disabled veterans out in the streets. And a friend of mine named Johnny Eady, congrats on your retirement. Johnny had this idea. He worked at physical plant at San Diego State University, and he said, you know, we have a lot of materials left over each year. We could take those materials and do some home repairs to, you know, some little old lady that needs it. And I had the idea to take those extra supplies and say, let's help veterans. Let's help veterans with homes. Let's help disabled veterans. And we called the program Healing Our Heroes Homes. And we had a lot of people come and remodel these homes of these disabled veterans. We had a lot of people. We had some sponsors, not a whole lot of money, but we had people come out and want to support veterans because San Diego is a veteran town. We did that, and it was around the time of 2015, 2016, where there was a spate of unarmed black men being shot and killed by white police officers, and it bothered me. And it was happening right around the time that folks were fighting for marriage equality here in the state of California. I believe it was Proposition 8. And at that time, Facebook was popping. I don't, there, yeah, there was Twitter by then. But I just remember at that time, a lot of people had turned their Facebook profile picture into the rainbow flag. So it was you and like, some type of filter. And it let people know that you were supporting gay marriage. And I didn't see anybody posting anything about supporting or being against the shooting of unarmed people who look like me. I didn't see any of that. And it bothered me because it's not like people didn't see what I was seeing. And I told you I'm a behaviorist. I'm into psychology. And it dawned on me why more people were in support of gay marriage than being outraged at what we were seeing law enforcement do to people who look like me. I need you to know, being in San Diego and being a professional and going and having an undergraduate degree and having a master's degree and working at 4 different universities, I have spent a lot of time being the only black person in the room. So I've met a lot of people who don't look like me over the years. I've probably met, I don't know, 10,000 people, 10,000 white people, I mean, in my life. as a result of the work that I do in the community and my professional career. And what I deduced was there were way more people who were in favor of marriage equality because they had more gay friends than they had black friends. Most of my white friends in San Diego, if you're watching this, you know it. I'm your only black friend, and I don't live in San Diego anymore. So now you don't spend time with any black people. People support their friends. If their friends are being done wrong, they will come to their friend's aid, no matter what their friend looks like or what language they speak. That's your friend, somebody that you care about. But if you don't have friends from some particular group, you don't really care about what's happening to them. You can't relate to it. It doesn't hit home for you. And that's what I deduced over that period of time. And so what I did was I went back to my roots of sports. I said, what can I do besides bitch and complain, which is what people do on social media? You don't like something, you complain about it, you talk about it, you make fun of other people. You ain't solving any problems. You're just talking about problems. I didn't want to talk about problems. I wanted to try and solve a problem. So I thought to myself, sports brings people together. I'm going to use sports to bring cops and community residents together. Because for all we know, some cop that pulls over some dude, they're both Laker fans. But in the middle of a traffic stop, that's no time to discover, hey, I'm a Laker fan. You have something in common. So I reached out to all of my people over the years that I had met. I reached out to Archie Griffin. I reached out to Clark Kellogg. I reached out to Tarkanian died right before I started this program. Tark would have loved this program. I reached out to people that were inside of sports and outside of sports, people I respected. And I said, this is the idea that I have to bring people together through sports. We're going to talk right before a sporting event, and then we're going to go to the sporting event. And every single person I talk to, high and low, inside and outside of collegiate athletics, professional sports, hedge fund managers, they're all sports fans. They said, Sean, we think that that's a fantastic idea. But I had to convince one person that it was a fantastic idea. And that person was the chief of police in San Diego. Her name was Shelley Zimmerman. Now, as fate would have it, I told you, God has directed my steps. There was a dude by the name of Father Henry Rodriguez in San Diego, and he was celebrating his 25th anniversary in the clergy. And he invited me to his 25th anniversary luncheon. And he made sure that I sat at the table of the current police chief and the assistant police chief. At the time, Shelley Zimmerman was the assistant police chief. And I didn't think anything of it. I met them, said hello. Shelley and I start talking, and wouldn't you know, Shelley Zimmerman, assistant chief of police, is an Ohio State alum. And if you're an Ohio State alum, you are a rabid Buckeye fan. When I told her I coached at Ohio State for 3 years and that the Archie Griffin was my boss and that I was there for the Final Four run, got my ring to prove it, and I was there for the Big East Championship, got my ring to prove it. She and I were friends for life, and we stayed in touch. So sports brought me and the chief of police together. I'm on the 8 freeway. I get a phone call. I wasn't paying attention to politics. And as fate would have it, I keep saying that, Shelley Zimmerman, the assistant chief, was calling to tell me that she's the new police chief. That's cool. I got a relationship with the police chief. I didn't know what I was going to do with that at the time because when she called me, I hadn't yet created Game Changer. Well, I called her up. I said, I have an idea. We went to lunch. and it was at lunch. We went to the Yard House in downtown San Diego. She did not drink. She came in uniform. And she said, I get it. Let's do it. And in December of 2016, Game Changer was formed. And if it wasn't for Game Changer, I wouldn't have met this young lady. If you're a sports fan, that is the owner of the Lakers. And if you are a sports fan, that is me interviewing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That was my first professional interview. That's the first time I ever got paid to interview somebody. And at some point, I could tell you that story, but following God's lead and trying to help people and utilizing sports put me in those spaces. And after I interviewed Kareem, I interviewed Magic. And this picture was taken inside of Jeannie Buss's office. And then I know that this picture is not going to be, I can't twist it now, but that's me and Robert Horry in Robert Horry's house. And I interviewed him. And I got paid to interview him. And the Lakers paid me to interview all these people. And it's because all I've wanted to do is help people and utilize sports to get that done. And a whole lot of doors open for me. And I firmly believe that we can utilize sports to solve a lot of problems because it does bring people together, and at least you're in a neutral environment. And I just figured we're at the game anyway. We might as well spend some time addressing a societal issue. And then we can all go to the game together after we're done having this at times heavy and deep conversation that's in a formal environment. After we're done doing that, let's go to the game together and spend casual time with each other like friends do. And that's the Game Changer model. And the people that I've met at Game Changer gave rise to the Cops and Convicts podcast because obviously I'm meeting a lot of cops. And I typically interview cops on the Cops and Convicts podcast who are retired so they can speak freely and tell you the truth about the profession. Some people don't like to hear the truth. They don't like to hear what the cops have to say, but a lot of cops have opened up their hearts and told you the ugly truth about the profession and some of the good things about the profession, but a lot of things about the profession that need to be changed. And as a result of these Game Changer training events that we do, a lot of the community residents that I met happen to have spent time in prison. So I'm like, well, what are their stories? Why did you get locked up? And it was amazing to discover just how similar convicted felons who spent time in prison are with cops. And it's not because they're all criminals. It's all because they're people. And a lot of people demonize cops and they demonize people who've spent time in prison too. So there's a lot more to my career. Let me see. Did I miss any? Did I miss any pictures? There's a lot of pictures I could show you guys, but I wanted to just hop on, create some content, talk to you about how sports got me to where I'm at. And we're the only program in the country that utilizes sports to bring together law enforcement and community residents to have a moderated focus group that collects data. And the data that we've collected about their perceptions, the data demonstrates that this model is very effective at changing the perceptions and the behavior of both cops and community residents. And the program is accredited in the state of California. So the cops are actually being trained through our program. That's right. Community residents sitting down and discussing problems and devising solutions with cops allow them to get continuing education units from the state of California. If you're a traditional member of law enforcement, you get continuing education units from the California Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training. The acronym is POST. And if you're a member of corrections, So if you work in a prison, if you're a corrections officer or a probation officer, you get continuing education units from standards and training for corrections through our program. We're the only program like it in the state. We're the only program like it in the country, according to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. So if you ever wondered why I talk about cops and I talk about people who have spent time in prison, and if you've gone on to our TikTok channel, which is the_original_game changer, all one word, you'll see nothing but content of real cops talking about different issues and real community residents, whether they spent time in prison or not. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on me and how I got here and how sports has been key to me getting here. But really, it all started with just being faithful to God. And I love sports, and He kept sports in my life. And it has resulted in me being here. And who knows what's going to happen with this podcast. I just hope you guys continue to tap in. At some point, I'm going to do another live stream, and it's not going to have anything to do with cops or convicts. I'm going to be doing some special live streams because there's more in life that I want to talk about than just cops and convicts and improving relations between cops and community residents. So I want to thank you for tapping in. Americano, tell your friends about the channel. You keep tapping in, so there must be something about what I'm creating that you like. And if you have any ideas, give them to me. If there's somebody that you want to hear talk, I'm probably going to do an interview with the LAPD police chief at some point. I can't tell you exactly when, but I have a very good relationship with him, and I met him through sports. So I'm going to jump off. I'm going to go to a comedy club store, a comedy show tonight. It's a fundraiser for my boy Nick Alexander. I will probably try and live stream tomorrow. Americano, if you're around, I hope you can make it. If not, I want to thank you for tapping in tonight. Have a great Friday night. Be safe.